Right. Hello, everybody. My conference paper was on science and Christianity, religion, specifically Christianity, a symbiotic relationship. Okay, so what is the basic idea? The basic argument of this paper is to change the perspective that science and religion are enemies. A lot of people kind of pin them against each other, and they use them to contradict each other, and they use them as tools to disprove the other's argument or the other side's, and it just pins them against each other as opposite sides. So the purpose of this paper is to change that, and to change and give a new perception of this idea, because I believe that science and religion can be on the same team, and they can actually be used to aid each other's arguments, and they can be used to support each other instead. Okay, so my paper is split into four subsections, four different arguments, those including archaeological information, the death, the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus and the science behind that. And then historical claims, so people, historians, Greek philosophers, stuff like that, that gives evidence and who claim that they knew Jesus existed, even Romans and people who despised Christians. And then the last subsection is the fate of the disciples. So we'll look and see what happened to the disciples. We'll look and see what happened to the disciples because of what they proclaimed and believed Jesus did. Okay, so the first part of my paper is the archaeological information. Um, and I went with a bunch of archaeological discoveries. They're all found in the Middle East, that include the Mesha Stela, the Merneptah Stela, the Tel Dan Stela, which are they're basically three ancient tablets that have carved writing of historical events and historical people that are actually also mentioned in the Bible, which just kind of shows that the Bible lines up with historical events and it is historically accurate. And then I also included the Ark of Titus and the Dead Sea Scrolls. All right. And the second part of my paper was going over specifically the death of Jesus. So it went behind the science of his punishment and the day and the hours leading up from his torture to his crucifixion, leading to his death. And it goes over some things such as hypervolemic shock, also known as cardiac tamponade, and including the torture that Jesus went through, from flogging to the crown of thorns to nails being pierced through him, and eventually the actual crucifixion. And science shows that the way of Roman crucifixion is meant to kill people quick, painful, and fast. They even sometimes break the legs of people on the cross so that they cannot pull themselves up on the cross, which science shows that Roman crosses are meant to, in a way, lock the victim's chest, which causes asphyxiation, which is a form of suffocation, which is another form of torture that Jesus went through. And all in all, with all of the science behind the actual Roman execution of this torture and crucifixion, there's no way Jesus could have survived. That is a scientific viewpoint. Okay, and the third part of my paper goes over the historical figures. These include Tacitus, Phlegon, Celsus, and Josephus. Starting with Tacitus, he was a Roman historian who actually claimed that Jesus did exist and was crucified. He was Roman. He hated Christians, and he was actually an enemy trying to disprove Christianity. He tried his best to prove that Jesus was lying about his claims of being the Son of God, but he never claimed that Jesus did not exist. He actually did the opposite. He claimed that Jesus did exist, but then he tried to argue points that Jesus was born of a Virgin Mary and other things like that. Next, we have Phlegon, who was a Greek writer, and he also wrote that he witnesses of evidence leading to the crucifixion. Next, we have Celsius, who is a Greek philosopher and another opponent of Christianity. And he, again, same as Tacitus, claimed that Jesus actually did exist. So none of these people actually argued that Jesus didn't exist. Most historians, even today, usually claim that, yes, Jesus was a real person. Yes, he did go through crucifixion, and yes, he did die. The real argument is, did he really resurrect, and was he really the Son of God? And lastly, we have Josephus, who was a Roman Jewish historian, and he believed and wrote that Jesus also did exist and was a real person. So again, they all claim that Jesus did exist and was a real person, even though they are all Romans and they hated Christianity. Okay, and then the last part of my paper is looking at the fate of the disciples. So basically, after Jesus was arrested, killed, and crucified, the disciples actually ran. They fled because they realized that he was arrested, tortured, and killed, and they did not want the same thing to happen to them, because they knew that if they were correlated or in some sort of correlation with Jesus, they also would have gone through some sort of punishment. So they ran and they fled. But after Jesus' so-called resurrection, the disciples actually completely changed. They all came out of hiding and they faced the Roman Empire head on and spread the news of Jesus' life and death. My cat is being a turd. They actually spread the information of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, knowing that they would be punished. So they knew that what they were saying, the Romans were going to punish and martyr them for, which is actually what happens. They pretty much all get killed brutally in many of the same ways that Jesus went through forms of torture, such as flogging and crucifixion. But again, many of them suffered punishment almost as bad as Jesus himself because of their belief in Jesus. And psychology even supports the idea that something supernatural or miraculous must have happened, an idea of, I don't know, the resurrection of Jesus, in order to change their mind and to have such an effect on the disciples that actually gave them the courage to face the Roman Empire and not be afraid of death, so that they actually went and claimed what they believed and what they saw, which was the resurrected Jesus. All right. Thank you for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful summer and take care. Are you going to sit still or are you going to be a turd? You're okay.